Dobry wieczór, witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie na pierwszym wykładzie z cyklu Wartości jako prawny fundament integracji europejskiej. Witam szczególnie panią dziekan Wydziału Humanistycznego, panią profesor Barbarę Kromolicką. Witam serdecznie również konsula honorowego Francji, pana profesora Puzynę. I tym samym myślę, że głos przekażę głównemu organizatorowi tego przedsięwzięcia, panu profesorowi Pasquale Policastro i jego, czy naszemu tutaj profesorowi, który Massimo Latore zaszczycił nas swoją obecnością, przybywając w zasadzie z Włoch, a dokładnie mówiąc z Londynu, gdzie jest w tej chwili na stypendium. Także bardzo serdecznie Państwa witam i oddaję głos Pasquale Policastro.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Dzień dobry Państwu. Cieszę się ogromnie, że możemy być tutaj razem. Pani dziekan, kłaniam się, pani konsule, jestem zaszczycony. Jestem bardzo radosny tej obecności waszej w tej sali, w której profesor Latore będzie wygłaszał pierwszy z tych wykładów dotyczącego naszego cyklu wartości w procesie integracji europejskiej. O co chodzi? Po prostu ustaliliśmy, myślę, że Państwo są świadomi, że ten rok szczególnie kładł nacisk nad problemem wartości w procesie integracji europejskiej. Z profesorem Latore w czerwcu, kiedy sytuacja Grecji, trudności Grecji w dziedzinie finansów publicznych podzielili Europę. Była pewna część Europy, która mówiła, nie, są długi, te długi trzeba płacić, chodzi o dyscyplinę. Była druga część Europy, która powiedziała, ale istniały obiektywne trudności, a byliśmy my, które musieliśmy płacić nasze po prostu długi ogromnymi wysiłkami i mówiliśmy, czemu powinniśmy coś takiego dopuszczać dla innych. Widocznie sprawa była związana z zagadnieniem moralnym. Nastąpiły potem wydarzenia w Paryżu i dzisiaj coraz bardziej musimy postawić sobie problem, w jaki sposób nasze rozumienie dobra i zło wpływają na rozumienie prawa, na rozumienie nasze obowiązki w ramach społeczeństw, w których żyjemy. Profesor Latore jest moim zdaniem jeden z 5-6 najlepszych filozofów prawa w skali światowej w karierze. To nie jest stwierdzenie, które ja powiem po prostu w sposób lekkomyślny. To jest, znam profesora Latore od dłuższego czasu, znam ogromną twórczość i erudycję jego publikacji. I w ogóle on reprezentuje szkołę neoinstytucjonalizmu. A co to znaczy? Oznacza to, że porządek prawny nie da się rozumieć bez wartości wykazane przez systemy moralne, ale także poprzez odpowiednie działanie prawnika. Więc ustalaliśmy ten cykl wykładów w ten sposób. Po pierwsze, chodzi o to, że profesor Latore, który jest osobą świecką, chce się odnieść do wartości Ewangelii, a przede wszystkim paressio, a mianowicie po prostu obowiązek mówienia całej prawdy, co jest bardzo istotne w europejskich negocjacjach. Po prostu jutro natomiast to będzie nad tematem prostej osoby, mianowicie osoba uboga, osoba prosta i która w przemówienie 7 błogosławieństw będzie widziana jako osoba istotna dla tworzenia nowego podejścia do życia razem. Będzie widziała Boga. I po prostu profesor Latorre chce dojść do głębokości tego zagadnienia w filozofii. Trzeci dzień będzie dotyczyło natomiast problemem wartości moralne i doradztwo dla działalności politycznej państwa. Po prostu moralność nie może być czymś po prostu abstrakcyjne, czy nasze stwierdzenie a priorystyczne. Po prostu musi być coś, które jest związane z rzeczywistością, z potrzebami człowieka. Więc profesor Latorre teraz w sprawie Anglii, tego wszystkiego, profesor Latorre jest bardzo pracowitym człowiekiem. Ma etat w Hull, niedaleko Londynu, i ma etat w Catanzaro, we Włoszech, gdzie moim zdaniem prowadzi najlepsze seminarium doktoranckie w skali światowej. Mianowicie wszyscy najwybitniejsze osoby się wybierają do niego i to jest ogromne bogactwo dla jego studentów. I tym razem po prostu chciałem, że to bogactwo to podzielić z państwem. Państwo są największym naszym darem. Nie oszukujmy się, po prostu to nie jest sprawa retoryczna. Wasi rodzice przekazują nam po prostu, co mają cenniejszego, własne dzieci. I po prostu jest naszym zaszczytem ogromnym, jest naszym ogromnym obowiązkiem. Państwo wiedzą, że ja wierzę w tych słowach i w związku z tym nalegałem, żeby państwo byli wszyscy tutaj razem, żeby myśleliśmy razem. Dużo robiliśmy rzeczy techniczne związane z prawem pozytywnym podczas tego semestru. To jest moment, żeby po prostu żeby się skupiliśmy na fundamencie. Więc z tego powodu chciałbym dziękować serdecznie władze Wydziału Humanistycznego, po prostu władze rektorskie, władze Wydziału Prawa, pan profesor Brejdak i was wszystkich. Po prostu przede wszystkim Massimo, że chciał poświęcić kilka dni razem z nami. Massimo, ti do la parola, è un segreto quello che ho detto. Quindi io ho detto, powiedziałem panu profesorowi, że jest tajemnica, co ja powiedziałem, więc nie będę ci po prostu tego. I po prostu i teraz profesor Latorre będzie wykładał, ja będę tłumaczył simultanicznie.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I hope so, at least, because I didn't understand a word, of course. But I rely on your friendship and generosity, so that I'm sure that you were extremely generous in your words towards me. Now, I am very grateful and very happy to be here. Thank you very much for your generous invitation. So I'm very grateful to Professor Brejdak and to Professor Policastro Pasquale, if you allow me.
Allow you.
And I'm very happy to be here in Stettin, this beautiful town. Now, let me explain what I intend to do in these 3 lectures. It is a bit, these 3 lectures are the outcome of a discussion we had with Professor Policastro, and also of kind of ambition of mine of putting together 3 things that at prima facie seem 3 different issues. So my intention is to put together the question of free speech, but it's not really free speech. In Greek it's paresia, and I will today now deal on this. Then the second issue is it's difficult to find the right word. I would say idiocy, but idiocy or the idiot, and I will explain this tomorrow, I hope. And then the third issue is a figure that, in my opinion, a philosopher, which is quite geographically, but not only geographically, close to my location, my academic location, which is in Calabria, in the deep south of Italy. And this philosopher is Tommaso Campanella. Tommaso Campanella is a Renaissance philosopher, important philosopher in the 16th century, 17th century, and I will explain how Tommaso Campanella, in a sense, relates and embodies even free speech and idiocy, or the idiot. Now, I will start with paresia, with free speech.
Mi faj
Please,
summare. Pan profesor chce robić te wykłady na temat wolność słowa, ale wolność słowa w szerokim tego słowa znaczeniu, to znaczy po grecku paresia. Drugi wykład będzie na temat człowiek ubogi duszy, więc idiota. I po prostu ta prostość to jest tematem istotny po prostu dla każdego dyskursu moralnego i politycznego. Trzecim wykładem natomiast będzie dotyczyło jeden filozof okresu renesansu, który wyciela paradygmat mówienia całości prawdy, a mianowicie paresia, i to jest Tommaso Campanella. Vai. Massimo.
Thank you very much. Now, I will deal today with paresia. Paresia is a Greek term, and it has been recently, more or less recently, been the object of beautiful research and books by Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault, you know him, I suppose, is a French philosopher, and he has two books, two publications of paresia. One is the recollections of his courses at Collège de France, I think it was 1981, and this book is called Le Gouvernement de Soi, so the ruling of oneself, the government of oneself. And the other book, which is this book in English, which I recommend you, is a beautiful book. It's again the registration of his lectures in Berkeley in 1982. He was to die. He died unfortunately in 1987. So I will follow in more or less Michel Foucault's research, but with some caution, and of course, with something, my addition, my interpretation of the issue. Yes, please.
Więc po prostu w sprawie paresia, a mianowicie wolności słowa, to jest greckie pojęcie, które niedawno zostało przedmiotem głębokich studiów francuskiego filozofa Michel Foucault, który zmarł w 1987 roku. I on ma dwie monografie. Jedna po francusku, a jak prowadzić siebie, Le Gouvernement de Soi-même, jak prowadzić siebie, a potem, które łączą jego wykłady w Collège de France w 1981 roku, a potem druga monografia, którą pokazał po angielsku, które łączy jego wykłady na Uniwersytecie Berkeley w Kalifornii w 1982 roku. I oczywiście profesor Latorre będzie po prostu analizował te nurty myślenia i będzie po prostu dodał jego osobistych refleksji. Bye.
Now, my approach to paresia is related to the question of freedom. Paresia has different translations. I don't know whether you know a bit of ancient Greek, but paresia comes from two words. It's a kind of combined word, putting together two different Greek terms, which is pan and rhesis. Pan means whole, everything, and rhesis means discourse or speech. So paresia means, so the in a sense, a literal translation would be saying everything. Saying everything. And if you look in an ancient Greek dictionary, you will see that paresia has a kind of antonym, so an opposite word, which is aresia. You know that a or an in ancient Greek is a privative, so it's the opposite of pan. Pan is everything, and we could say an is nothing. So aresia is saying nothing, which is silence. So on the one side we have paresia, on the other side we have aresia. On the one side we have speaking and saying everything, and on the other side we have saying nothing. Now, this term is translated in different ways. It's a very difficult word to translate because we don't have something that really can render the meaning of this word in the ancient Greek. Of course, in the ancient Greek, the same word, this paresia, assumes different meanings in different contexts, and there is an evolution of the word and the notion that I will try to present you this evening. But the first use of the word, the fundamental use of the word, so the primitive use of the word, has to do with freedom. This is why paresia has been translated very often as free speech, because if you can saying everything is, you can say everything only if you are free. If you are not free, you cannot say everything. I think this is clear. As a matter of course, it's a phenomenological evidence. So paresia, saying everything, is related to freedom, because only under freedom, only if you are free, you can say what you think, everything. Everything means everything that you think. So paresia is related to the notion and to the issue of freedom.
Just
Now,
a second, Massimo.
please.
Okay. Ja widzę, że większość z was rozumieją, to widzę to z oczy, tylko że po prostu chciałbym streszczyć, po prostu paresia wychodzi z dwóch słów greckich. Jeden jest pan, to znaczy całość, a druga jest resia, przemówienie, dyskurs. Więc po prostu chodzi o mówienie całość. Natomiast jeżeli się patrzy na stare słowniki, widzimy, że jest też po prostu słowo, które zaprzecza znaczenie paresia. I to jest aresia, a mianowicie żaden dyskurs. Więc my mamy dwa podejścia do dyskursu. Albo mówimy całość, albo nie mówimy nic. I to jest dla analizy dyskursu politycznego to jest bardzo istotna sprawa. Albo nie mówimy nic. I profesor Latorre podkreśli, że oczywiście, że paresia została tłumaczona przede wszystkim ze znaczenia wolności wypowiedzi. Bo jeżeli jesteś wolny, wtedy możesz powiedzieć wszystko. I możesz powiedzieć całość. Jeżeli nie, to sprawa się robi bardziej złożona. Prawda? Vai, Massimo.
Now, you know that I said that paresia is related to the issue of freedom. You know that when we speak of freedom in political philosophy, we usually have, in the tradition of the discussion about freedom, we have two concepts, and these concepts are played the one against the other. And these are negative against positive freedom. This is an old distinction which was more or less for the first time articulated, elaborated by Benjamin Constant in a in a very famous conference, lecture given in Paris, and this conference had the title of Freedom de la Liberté, des modernes comparé avec celle des anciens, which means of the freedom of moderns compared with the freedom of the ancients. And the idea was that the ancient notion of freedom was positive freedom, that is the freedom of participating in the community. So in a sense, we could say democratic freedom, participation. This is ancient, Constant claimed, while moderns have a different notion of freedom, and this is negative freedom, liberal freedom, if you like. So the freedom of non-interference, so that you have one, it's not participation, it's that you have some, let's say, place where you are free to do what you like, and you are free from all the other people. So you are free insofar as other people do not interfere on your conduct. And this is negative, and this is modern. And now this distinction has been, so to say, endorsed and developed by another more recent political philosopher, Isaiah Berlin, was professor in Oxford, and has a very famous article, long article, essay, Two Concepts of Liberty. And these two concepts of liberty, again, are the negative, the modern, and the positive, let's say, the ancient, we could say. Now, I never really, personally, found this distinction, I could say, explaining really our predicament, modern predicament in the world as citizens. And I don't think that this distinction either was able to explain the ancient notion of liberty. And I would add the essence, conceptual core of liberty. My contention is that negative liberty without positive liberty cannot hold, cannot be working. We cannot have a negative liberty without positive liberty. This is my contention. I will try. And this idea, I think, you find clearly exposed and interpreted in the notion of parousia. So parousia, we'll see what parousia means, is a way of contrasting this traditional distinction between negative and positive liberty and reaffirming that the two notions are strongly, and I would say essentially, conceptually and practically connected. Now, parousia is a democratic concept. So we have this notion, we find this notion, and I will now give you some examples. In the democratic context of ancient Greece, there is no parousia in Sparta. We don't have parousia in Sparta. We have parousia in Athens. And parousia is part of a sequel in the ancient Greek democratic notion, culture, of three concepts. There are three concepts, and parousia is, let's say, the last one. So it's, in a sense, the conclusion. The last one does not mean the minor one, the less important, but in a sense, the conclusive one. Yeah? So we have isonomia, that means that everyone is equal before the law. Now, everyone is equal before the law does not mean, it's not a formal notion. It's not just that once we have a rule, since the rule is a class, and the class is concerning a specific generality of facts in the world, every class, so every rule will, in this sense, respect the equality before the law. This is, we had this interpretation of equality before the law, especially in legal positivism. I don't want to enter too much in this, can be technical, but if equality before the law means a different, it's not a formal idea. The idea is that we are of equal concern in a legal community. We have equal dignity. We are equal before the law insofar we have equal dignity, equal status, equal normative status. The second concept in the Greek tradition is isegoria. Isegoria means that people have all the freedom of speaking, freedom of speech, equal freedom of speech, isegoria. And then parousia. So you would say, where is the difference between parousia and isegoria? Because isegoria is already equal freedom of speech, equal access to speech. What is the difference? If you will not understand the difference if you just interpret parousia in terms of free speech. Now, I tried to explain the difference between isegoria and parousia, which is important. Isegoria is the citizen's equal right to free speech. This is an institutional, formal, normative status. So this is formal. Isegoria is a formal status. Parousia is the capacity of challenging, established or prevailing opinions in the public space. It is a chance, a power, it is a power given to citizens beyond the institutional space. So in a sense, while isegoria still remains within the rule of law, and this is extremely interesting. So isegoria is within the rule of law. Parousia goes beyond the rule of law. And this makes the notion extremely interesting and also extremely problematic. We'll see how it's beyond the rule of law. Please.
Un punto
Okay.
cruciale.
All right.
Profesor Latorre, poszedł do przodu. Mówił, że kiedy w filozofii politycznej, kiedy się mówi o wolności, my mamy dwa pojęcia. Przede wszystkim pojęcia wolności negatywnej i pojęcie wolności pozytywnej. Benjamin Constant w bardzo ważnym wykładzie, porównując wolność osób starożytnych do osób nowożytnych, on powiedział, że w okresie starożytnej Grecji wolność była pozytywna. Co to znaczy pozytywna? Uczestnicza. Człowiek był wolny, bo uczestniczył do życia publicznego. Natomiast osoby nowoczesne mają wolność w sensie negatywnym, a mianowicie po prostu wolność wciela pewien zakres, w który inni nie mogą ingerować. Tak? I po prostu oczywiście te dwa podejścia zostali opracowywane też przez bardzo słynny profesor z Oxfordu, Isaiah Berlin. On uważa, że jednak nie możemy pojąć wolność negatywna, wolność pozytywna bez wolności negatywnej i nawzajem. Mianowicie w jego koncepcji nie można mieć wolność negatywna, po prostu zakaz ingerencji, jeżeli nie mamy też wolności uczestniczej, wolności partycypacyjnej. I więc z tego powodu on argumentuje, twierdząc jego tezę, wracając do starożytnej Grecji. Po prostu w starożytnej Grecji mamy trzy pojęcia związane z wolnością wypowiedzi. Po prostu, więc parousia jest, on chce opowiedzieć jego tezę, sformułuje ją lepiej, mówiąc, że parousia jako tako jest pojęciem demokratycznym. I to możemy rozumieć, biorąc pod uwagę, że paresia jest łączona z innymi pojęciami. Po pierwsze, isonomia. Tak? Isonomia to jest równość wobec prawa. Iso to jest taki sam, nomos reguła, taka sama reguła dla wszystkich. Takie podejście jednak nie jest formalnym podejściem, po prostu jest używane dzisiaj we współczesnym pozytywizmie prawniczym. On nie chce iść w szczegółach. To nie jest formalnym podejściem. Oznacza to, że wszyscy mamy taką samą godność i więc musimy być traktowani w sposób równy przez prawo. Ale mamy drugie podejście starożytnej Grecji, a to jest nie izonomia, lecz isegoria. Mianowicie isegoria, mamy wszyscy taką samą wolność wypowiedzi. Więc co to jest różnica między isegoria a paresią? Po prostu isegoria istnieje w ramach prawa bieżącego, w ramach bieżącej zasady prawa. Natomiast po prostu paresia jest wolność krytykowania danego podejścia. Jest wolność po prostu poddania do dyskusji danego pojęcia normatywnego. W związku z tym paresia idzie poza wolnością, idzie poza regułą prawną, idzie poza rule of law. Why?
Thank you. Now, I'm trying to articulate the difference, which is very important between isegoria and paresia. So isegoria is equal free speech. What is paresia? I was saying isegoria is an institutional concept, while paresia is an extra-institutional concept. If we adopt, there is a philosopher, Greek, of Franco-Greek philosopher I like very much, is Cornelius Castoriadis, is a great expert in ancient Greek philosophy. And Castoriadis makes a distinction of three spheres in the, he believes that this distinction is a general distinction, but especially in the ancient Greek political world, but he then extends this distinction to, let's say, to a general category. We can have three spaces. We have three political spaces, or three distinct, three areas of human conduct, if you like. One is oikos, it is house. So the house. The second space is agora. Agora is market, but agora is not market in economic terms. The market we have now, unfortunately, I would say, the idea that market is a pure economical dimension, but market is not a pure economic dimension. Market is a place, is the square. In Italian, I would say that we have a beautiful term, piazza, the piazza, yeah? And in the piazza, people discuss informally, but the piazza is very important because in the piazza, you form your opinion. And then we have, so agora is where people meet and discuss. And then we have the ecclesia, which you know that in the Athenian democracy was the assembly, the general assembly. It was an institution. Many people, lots of people. Ecclesia was made. It's not kind of parliament, but direct, without representation. Now, while isegoria is something which is exercised in the ecclesia, so it's an institutional position. This is my interpretation. This is not paresia, I would say, is something that is pertaining to agora. So it's something which is extra-institutional and takes place especially when people gather together. It's public but not institutional, and they speak together. So parousia is somehow extra-institutional. It is what makes democracy, this is very important, what makes democracy not a quiet regime, but instead a turbulent one. So this was very clear to the ancient people. To understand democracy, we shouldn't go and look at the American elections or French elections. We should make a travel in time and go back to the Athens of the 5th or 6th century. And there, in order to understand the origins of the terms, so to say, the roots of what believe democracy is. And there we would find parousia, for instance, and we would find that, of course, representation is not, we interpret democracy in terms of representation. We have a representative democracy. The ancient Greek didn't have representative elections, at least in democracy. Representation was something for oligarchy. Elections was something that was possible and proper of oligarchies, not of democracies. If you have, in a democracy, at least in Athens, it was chance that decided for most of the institutional commitments, or for most of the institutional roles. This is very well said. Even Aristotle said that when we have elections, we don't have democracy, which is very interesting because it is completely different, opposite what we think that democracy is connected with elections, okay? So we think democracy is elections. Very well. In the Greek tradition, in the Greek political culture, democracy has nothing to do with elections. Nothing to do with elections. And, but a lot to do with parousia. And parousia is the fact that people can speak, but not just that they have a right to speak, because it's not just we have a right to speak, free speech, okay, but they speak challenging what are established opinions. They are even insulting people. So the assemblies in Athens were extremely turbulent. So parousia means criticizing people, even insulting them, okay? So it's turbulence. It's not, democracy is not quiet. It's not quiet. There is conflict. The people in charge are perpetually under scrutiny, not just every 5 years by elections, but perpetually, every day, and every day they can be criticized and insulted and asked for justification by everyone. This is parousia. So parousia is provocation, challenging leadership, and tension. You have parousia if you, in a sense, create tension, create conflict. Now, this is very well said by a fragment by Euripides. I will try to find the fragment by Euripides. Okay, I found the fragment. Euripides is one of the greatest, there are 3 tragic poets during the Athenian Golden Age: Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Euripides. And Euripides is the most, let's say, the closest to democracy. you know, that the tragedies and also comedies were very important for the citizens in the Athenian democracy. You know that, you might, perhaps you don't know that, but that citizens, Athenian citizens, now we pay to go to theater. We pay, we should pay, usually. We pay a ticket, okay? Now, Athenian citizens were paid. They were paid to go to the tragedy. You understand? They were paid. I give you, I don't know, 1 drachma. The Athenian drachma is it's beautiful. I don't know whether you have any passion for numismatics. Have a look in Google. It's a beautiful, actually, the Greek, ancient Greek coins are the most beautiful ever. Even our coins are not so beautiful. So there were silver coins. They gave citizens a drachma. Drachma is a lot of money, was a lot of money. And they say, I give you a drachma, but you should go if you go to the tragedy. And they went to the tragedy, you understand? So why? Because the tragedy was the public education. By tragedy, people learn together. You know that Aristotle says that by tragedy, people had catharsis. They had, Aristotle in the Poetics introduced this idea of catharsis. People cleaning, it's a kind of public confession. In the Catholic Church today we have confession, but confession is public, okay? It's private. Catharsis was a public event. People together were confronted with their sins, with their possible sins, political sins, moral sins, and they were cleaned through the assistance to the show, to the tragedy. So the tragedy has a specific political and public meaning. Now, yes, please.
Profesor Latorre, now teraz zaczyna iść po prostu w głębi jego tezy. A mianowicie po prostu on twierdzi, że ażeby rozumieć różnicę między wolnością wypowiedzi prostą, instytucjonalną i segoria, a presją, my musimy rozumieć po prostu płaszczyznę polityczne, w które działała starożytna Grecja. Po prostu były 3 płaszczyzny. Jedna była oikos, gospodarstwo domowe. Druga była agora. Rynek oznacza rynek, a dzisiaj, to nie rynek, w którym się sprzeda, oznacza to plac publiczny, w którym się dyskutuje, tak? A potem była trzecia płaszczyzna polityczna, która była eklezja, a co było zgromadzenie. W związku z tym po prostu w zgromadzenie ma pojęcie i ma charakter instytucjonalny. W zgromadzeniu się dyskutuje według pewnych zasad, tak? Po prostu natomiast już w agorze, w placu dyskusja jest bardzo żywa, jest bardzo burzliwa. Chcę powiedzieć, że demokracja ateńska nie była oparta na przedstawicielstwie. Więc na przedstawiciel, który idzie w zgromadzeniu i dyskutuje według reguł. Po prostu przedstawicielstwo jest typowe dla oligarchii, dla rządu niewielu osób, które mogli wybierać swojego przedstawiciela. W demokracji ateńskiej po prostu osoby, które piastowali urzędy publiczne, były losowane. Więc w demokracji, dzisiaj my łączymy demokrację z wolnymi wyborami, po prostu w Atenie demokracja nie miała nic wspólnego z wyborami. I w związku z tym po prostu powstaje to, że dyskusja była koniecznie burzliwa. A mianowicie demokracja nie była charakteryzowana poprzez wybory i przez rozmowę w zgromadzeniu. Demokracja jest czymś burzliwe. Ludzie po prostu wyzywali inne strony. po prostu atakowali inne stanowiska i w związku z tym po prostu to służył w pewnym sensie dla tworzenia nowego typu człowieka poprzez stałe iście naprzeciw, poprzez stałe krytykowanie. I w tym momencie profesor Latorre szuka fragment Euripidesa, ten autor tragedii greckiej, które najbliższe jest myśli demokratycznej. Przede wszystkim powie profesor Latorre, czym była tragedia. Tragedia, oczywiście, żeby uczestniczyć w tragedii, ludzie dostali pieniądze. Mianowicie, ja daję drachma, mówił, to był piękny pieniądz srebrny, która miała bardzo dużą wartość. Proszę iść i zobaczyć to na Wikipedii. Tak, człowiek dostaje drachmę, żeby iść do tragedii. Co to jest tragedia? Tragedia jest to miejsce, w które wszystkie te złe elementy były wypowiadane. Jest rodzajem publicznej spowiedzi i Arystoteles podkreśli, że poprzez tragedię nastąpi katarsis. Co to jest? Transformacja własnego siebie. Poprzez rozumienie błędów, tak? Poprzez bolesnego rozumienia siebie nastąpi transformacja. I w związku z tym po prostu ludzi razem poprzez tą krytykę, i która była po prostu odzwierciedlona też w tragedii, po prostu dojdą do transformacji wspólnoty. Vai Massimo.
Thank you. So I was saying there are three very famous, important, tragic poets, authors: Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Euripides. Euripides is the one that is, in a sense, more political than the other two. Perhaps even more democratic, we could say. And is one of the other in that mostly, I would say the most important author or source we have for parousia. Also, if you want to understand democracy in ancient Greek or democratic thought, you should read his tragedies. His tragedies are also kind of exercise in political theory. Now, there is in one of his tragedies, the Menidae, we have only fragments. You know, unfortunately, Euripides, Aeschylus, and Sophocles, they wrote a lot of tragedies. We have only a few of them left. And we found this, we have this fragment, fragment 737. Fragment 737 by Euripides. I read it in Greek, and then I try to translate it in Greek, it's like the same, it's following. Kalon galetes katenes parousia. Now, I try to explain this. So, no. Now, kalon, you know, kalon is beautiful or fine, or a fine thing. It's a neuter. It's a neuter. So, a fine thing. Kalon is a fine thing. Now, you know that in Greek, like in Latin, like in Russian, I don't know in Polish, to be in the present indicative can be neglected, can be put aside. So if I say I'm Massimo, in Latin I could say ego maximus, and also in Greek I could say ego maximus. The Maximus is a Latin name, it's not a Greek name.
To Massimo, on powie, że po prostu po starożytnym greckim, tak, czasownik, i po polsku też, i po włosku też, i po rosyjsku też, czasownik być, tak, w czasie teraźniejszym, może być pozostawione w Bogu. Czyli nie mówi ja jestem Massimo, ja Massimo, tak? To nie jest Massimo, to jest Massimo, a ja mówię to Massimo, prawda? I to Jarek. Okay.
All right. Okay. So Calonne.
Massimo, mi devi... Allora, jedna z najbardziej podstawowych metod filozofii zaczyna od języka. Professor Massimo Latorre idzie według tej metody. Ho dovuto dire per forza qualche cosa. Uno dei metodi più importanti della filosofia parte dalla lingua, dallo studio del linguaggio come metafora dall'essere. E tu stai andando in questa direzione per indiriggere gli studenti.
I hope I will not bore you. I will not be boring. I'm sorry if I'm not boring. It's the sin of any teacher or any speaker to be boring, so I hope not to be boring. We have this phrase in Greek. Perhaps I shouldn't go too deep in this philological explanation. Okay, so I have kalo, aletes, kai katenes, kai atenes, paresia, which means kalon is a fine thing, aletes is true or truthful, and then we have this kai atenes, paresia. So we could translate this phrase, a fine thing is paresia, that is truthful, aletes, and ernst, sincere, which could be kai atenes. But this atenes means also a different thing, and also has been translated in a different way. And the way it has been translated, I would prefer, is the following. A fine thing is the straining and truth-making paresia. So paresia, so this free speech, this challenging, is nice, is beautiful, is important. Why it is important? Because it has two merits, two outcomes. By paresia, by challenging established opinions, you reach truth, because you have truth only if you can challenge opinions. Otherwise, you cannot have truth. You have truth through challenge. But also, paresia is straining. It is provoking tension, provoking conflict. So this atenes means that paresia is something that is there to provoke conflict. So you have paresia if there is a conflict, if there is something against which the speech is directed. It's not just free speech in this sense. It's not just speaking whatever you like, but it's speaking whatever you like, whatever you believe is true, but also whatever you want to use against some established opinions that, by being, in a sense, too established, is no longer supported by truth. So in order to have truth, you should, in a sense, we could say, truths need to be refreshed. Truth need to be rejustified. Truth should need to be feeded. A truth is like, in a sense, if you like, it's like a tree, or is it like a plant that need to be given water.
If I interrupt you, what is the difference between the truth that has to be refreshed, rejustified, and the scientific method based upon trial and error?
I think it's...
because I try to join the logic of those times with the logic of today.
You are right, because, this is very important for Campanella. Campanella was you know, Campanella paresia was answered by two persons, by two scholars. One is Descartes and the other one is Galileus. So in this sense, you're right. But this we'll see it in the end, okay? I think there is a difference. And the difference is while truth is in the modern times, or let's say in the modern times, is something that is property only of descriptive statements. Paresia is something that assumes that truth is something that also is possible for normative statements. So I challenge and actually paresia is directed especially to normative truths, to truths in morality and in politics. So if I say, for instance, it is just to make war with Sparta, okay? This is traditional debate there was in Athens before the Peloponnesian War. And someone says it is just, and then a citizen rises and say, no, you are saying this because you are a corrupted person and you want to profit of the war, okay? Now, this is a paresia. This is an express speech. It's challenging the argument, even insulting the person, you understand? But it's challenging, and the person that is the object of the so-called free speech has the obligation to justify himself. All right?
Okay, now I have to translate. Teraz muszę tłumaczyć. I will translate now. Massimo, mi permetti? I will translate.
Prego.
Okay, now profesor Latorre podkreśli jeden fragment Euripidesa. Były 3 pisarzy tragedii greckiej, tak? Dlatego, że chodzi o to, że o wznowienie społeczeństwa, tak? Poprzez wolność wypowiedzi. I Euripides był ten, który najbardziej był interesowany problemem demokracji, może najbardziej demokratyczny. I stanowi bardzo istotne źródło, żeby rozumieć, czym jest paresja. I w jednej tragedii, Emendi, mamy mało fragmentów tego, bo praktycznie wszystkie te tragedie my nie posiadamy w całości, mamy tylko pewne fragmenty. I fragment numer 737 Euripidesa powie Kalon aletes kai Atenes paresia i kalon to ładnie, to fajnie. Fajnie, aletes, prawdziwe, kai Atenes paresia, Atenes to jest szczere, Atenes to jest szczere, więc po prostu fajnie, prawidłowe i szczere to paresja. I w związku z tym wychodzi to rozumienie profesora Latorre, tego fragmentu, i widzicie Państwo, profesor Latorre stara się korzystać z metody analizy językowych pojęć. Na przykład wszyscy filozofowie współczesni korzystają też z tej metody. Jest to, że my mamy prawdę, jeżeli my możemy dyskutować, że my możemy atakować tą prawdę, a żeby umożliwić tę prawdę, żeby ona była w rzeczywistości oczyszczona poprzez dyskusję, poprzez krytykę, poprzez debatę. Na przykład w Paresji, w Atenie, w Paresji muszą istnieć 2 elementy. Jeden za i jeden przeciwko. I w związku z tym, jeżeli my w Atenie, w placu po prostu dyskutujemy, czy robić wojnę do Sparty, po prostu jeden mówi tak, ja chcę robić wojnę do Sparty, bo to jest sprawiedliwa wojna do Sparty. Nie jest odpowiedź. Ty jesteś korumpowanym człowiekiem. Ty chcesz zarobić od tych broni. I z tego powodu chcesz prowadzić wojnę. I w związku z tym ta krytyka oczyści stwierdzenie. Więc mamy, że prawda musi poprzez ciągłą dyskusję, poprzez ciągłe oczyszczenie istnieje. Tak? Po prostu i to jest to pojęcie, które profesor Latorre nam chce wyjaśnić. Vai.
Thank you. Now, I will, in order to give you the sense of what we are saying, because we are so far away from this world, and nevertheless this world is our world, and this is a privilege we have. We are members of the Western world, and we have a continuity of tradition of 2,500 years. I think this is a privilege we have. We have a conversation that is lasting 2,500 years. We shouldn't forget that. So we are in company of people that lived 2,500 years before our age, before our days, and there is a continuity. This continuity, happily enough, were never broken. So even if we are far away from this world is still our world, because we use their terms, we use their terminology, and we use their notions. Now, I will read, and you will understand the importance of this idea, and also how much negative, and negative means the freedom of, in a sense, private freedom, and free speech, in a sense, is a private freedom, and positive freedom, the freedom of being part of member and citizen in a democratic body, are strongly connected. And I read to you a fragment from another tragedy from Euripides. This is Suppliants. In Italian, we say supplici. Supplici is much better than suppliants, I must say. But anyway, now I don't want to tell you the story. We have in this fragment, we have two figures. We have a herald. Herald is the messenger, the herald. And on the other side, we have the citizen of Athens, and this citizen is called Theseus. So we have the herald and Theseus. Now, it is important to understand, and this is also, very important to understand how many concepts we have today, they have been, in a sense, changed by Christianism filtering the Hellenistic and the Greek tradition. For instance, you should think of how much we interpret today political power in terms of fatherness, in terms of, let's say, family-related concepts, because we have our Father, our Holy Father, and so on and so on. And this is a different tradition. This is the Judeo-Christian tradition. But, in the Greek tradition, or for instance, we have the idea that the good politician is a good pastor, the pastor. Okay? The pastor. The pastor is someone that takes care of sheep. And this is a metaphor we use for politics. So politicians are people that take care of their citizens, like the good pastor takes care of his own sheep. Now, this would be, in Plato, there is a dialogue about that. And Plato is horrified by this metaphor, because this metaphor, he says, cannot apply to politics, because in politics we are equals, of equal dignity. Politics is something that takes place within the space of equality. People are equals, humans are equals, but the pastor and the sheep are not equal, are ontologically different. And the pastor is superior to the sheep in a clear way, in an evident way. So the metaphor of the pastor cannot apply to politics. It's apolitical. It's something that has nothing to do with politics. The same father, because the idea in Greek was that the father had full mastery over children and in the family. Unfortunately, we know that in Athens, women were not equal to human beings. So the space of family was fully apolitical. Why was the space, oikos, was fully apolitical? Why was the space of family apolitical? Because in the family there is no equality. So you cannot interpret politics in terms of fatherness. Or for instance, I was telling this we had dinner, Professor Bradek was so kind to invite me to have lunch together. And I remembered him that we have another metaphor we have for politics, is the ship. Aristotle used this, for instance, already. And in the ship there is a captain, and the captain is the politician steering the ship, okay? And in the ship, in the ship till the 16th, 17th century, the mother of the ship was the people having rowers in their hands. So the galley, in Italian, galera. In Italian, galera means also prison. And there were prisons because the people with horse were slaves, okay? But in the Athenian experience, the ship was the trireme, and the people having horse were the best of the citizens. They were free men. They were not slaves. So it was not a prison. The boat was not a prison. It becomes a prison in Rome. In Rome, it is a prison. In Rome, the people, the mother of the ship, are slaves. Not in Athens. They are free. And they are the people governing, the ruling body of the city. There is an anti-democratic leaflet, small book, by the pseudo-Xenophon, Constitution of Athenians. And this starts with a eulogy celebration of the trireme, trireme in Italian, the trireme, trireme. So the boat with these three rows of oars, okay? And because this was given to the citizens. So it was ironic meant, the celebration of the trireme. You understand? That was something, an anti-democratic mood to celebrate the trireme. Okay, so now this is, we have now different concept. And a very different concept we have today is the difference of the messenger. The messenger. The messenger is angelos, the angel, okay? Now, the angel is a beautiful, for us, is a beautiful person, a nice person, the messenger, the herald. For the Greek, for Euripides, but the herald is something that deserves only despise. is a very low figure. Very low. And this is why, for instance, among the gods, the lowest gods in the Olympus is Hermes, because Hermes, you know, it's the gods of thieves, for instance. It's the gods of thieves, il dio dei ladri. And this is why Hermes is the messenger. So it's the lowest rank among gods is the messenger, and it's the herald. Now, the herald, why is the herald the lowest figure? And I explain you. It's very simple. Because it's the opposite of the paresiastes. Because who is the paresiastes? Paresiastes, the one that exercise paresia. The one that has free speech. The free speaker. Now, the messenger is not a free speaker. The messenger is completely subservient to someone telling him what he has to say. The messenger, the herald, says something that is ordered to say and cannot say more than he was ordered to say. So it's exactly the opposite of the paresiastes, and this means that it's despiteful.
Pan rektor Puzina patrzy, słucha z wielkim zainteresowaniem, jako jeden z ojców polskiej transformacji ustrojowej tego przemówienia. Dlatego, że profesor Massimo Latorre powiedział coś takiego, że my mamy do czynienia z tym, że wolność wypowiedzi to można rozumieć tak jak prywatną wolność, ale można też ją rozumieć jako publiczną wolność, jako wolność krytykowania. I w związku z tym starasz się rozumieć i przekazać znaczenie tej płaszczyzny politycznej. I wróci do Euripidesa, w które są ludzie, którzy namawiają, chcą nam mówić, prawda? I po prostu i w tym mamy dwa podmioty. Jeden jest Tezeus, król, a drugi jest po prostu herold. I tutaj jest to, że herold, jak to rozumiemy, herolda? Te pojęcia w starożytnej Grecji dzisiaj już nie rozumiemy, tak jak ich rozumieliśmy kiedyś, bo te wszystkie pojęcia zostały przekształcone przez tradycję judaiczno-chrześcijańską. Na przykład, po prostu on mówi o metaforze pasterza, tak? O metaforę pasterza jako metaforę polityka, tak? Prowadzenia polityki. Platon po prostu był bardzo przeciwny tej metafory. Dlatego, że po prostu pasterza jak polityk, wódcy, prawda, prowadzący innych, i to jest wódz prowadzący innych. I proszę, ja nie chcę mówić o Polsce w tym momencie, ale w czasie rządów mazowieckich okazało się jedna książka o Wałęsie, które właśnie miało jako tytuł Wódz, prawda? I po prostu i tutaj mamy tą sprawę, że to nie może być pojęcie polityczne, bo ten pasterz, który jest wódcem, nie jest równy dla innych. Nie jest równy, prawda, innym. On jest pasterzem, a potem mamy owce, które są czymś mniejsze, prawda? I po prostu i w tym znaczeniu to pojęcie stosujesz się do rodziny, do przestrzeni rodzinnej. My stosujemy, że po prostu mamy głowę rodziny, tak? I to jest właśnie, jeżeli przyjmujemy to pojęcie rodziny, tak jak pojęcie żydowsko-chrześcijańskie, w tym momencie mamy politykę, która jest prowadzona po prostu, w której jeden jest w pozycji nierównej jak do innych. I w związku z tym po prostu trzeba powiedzieć to, że natomiast w Atenie osoby, które pracowali, osoby, które robili robotę, były najlepszymi osobami. Natomiast gdy w Rzymie po prostu osoby politycznie wolne po prostu nie pracowali. I też po prostu w statkach prowadzone rękami, prawda, po prostu, które poszli do wojny, w Atenie poszli obywatele. Natomiast po prostu uwięzieni poszli w Rzymie do tej służby. Więc w związku z tym po prostu musimy rozumieć, że w koncepcie ateńskim my mamy człowiek, który pracuje i człowiek, który uczestniczy, tak? I który uczestniczy i po prostu i w związku z tym, że uczestniczy, po prostu dyskutuje. I z tego powodu mamy to pojęcie herolda. Herold jest ten, który daje wiadomości. Herold jest wśród bogów greckich najmniejszy Bóg z najmniejszej rangi. Dlatego, że po prostu on przekazuje wiadomość, on mówi tak, jak jemu kazano mówić. A więc jest czymś zupełnie odwrotnym od osoby korzystającej z paresji, które po prostu nie mówi tak, jak kazano mówić, ale mówi, co myśli, jest dobrze. We can do the right as we can see the right. Yes, okay. So that, please go, Professor Latorre, go ahead.
Thank you. So I read now a passage from the Suppliants 399, 434. This is the now there is this, I don't tell you the story, but there is a herald from Thebes, it's a Greek city, coming to Athens. And he says, "Who rules this land? Who will receive the message I have from Creon, ruler of the land of Cadmos, since the day when Polynices had killed Eteocles, his brother, outside our 7 gates?" So the herald comes to Athens, and the first thing is, who rules this land? In Greek is much stronger, because it's already, a kind of a declaration of war against democratic Athens. Is "tis ges tyrannos," who is the tyrant of this land? This, who ges this land, tyrannos, the tyrant. Who is of this land the tyrant? And Theseus says, "One moment, hold it, stranger, hold it, stranger. Stop it here." I can translate in more colloquial way. You began your speech with the wrong word. You began your speech with the wrong word. The wrong word is tyrant. It's tyrant. There is no ruler here. There is no tyrant here. This city is free of such men. We don't have tyrants in this city. It is ruled by the citizens themselves, rich and poor alike, rich and poor alike. And it is they who hold the various offices of the state in annual turns. Rich and poor are equal here. This is very nice, beautiful. You see that democracy has to do also with equality. There is no difference between rich and poor. No difference. I think modern democracy is quite different. And the herald replies, the Theban herald, "Ha, and your words, they are like a lucky throw of the dice for me. My city, the city that has sent me here, Thebes, is ruled by one man, and only one man, not by a whole herd of them. Herd, you know, is said of sheep. It is a city which allows no one to trick its people with sweet words, trick them into doing now one thing, now another, into doing things that suit his own purposes. It doesn't have men whose first speeches are received well, but then they destroy everything. And then, what do, these men? They lie to hide all the damage they have caused, and with those lies, they escape justice. How can a mindless herd rule a city properly? How can a how can a mass of people without mind, and people are without mind, usually, can head a city properly? It can't. Wisdom cannot be obtained by haste, but by patience, by time. Now, I don't know whether you are familiar with Greek philosophy, but this is here one of the subjects we find in Plato's dialogues. So, on the one side, we have a city which is ruled by the people themselves, and it is ruled by speech. Because, when you rules by many, with a body is ruled by many people, these many people should deliberate, they should speak, they should exercise free speech, they should discuss, they should agree. There is no problem of speech when there is a tyrant. A tyrant doesn't have to convince anybody. But in a democracy, you should convince people, because in a democracy, you rule by speech, not just by force. So you should convince people, and you should be able to convince them. So you should believe in the possibility of everyone to raise good arguments. So people, even the poorest person is sometimes able to give a good argument. And you should also believe that these arguments can be used in a proper way, so they can be sincere and can be truth-telling. If you have a cynic idea of speech and discourse, if you don't believe in agreement, but you believe in force, you cannot be really believing in democracy. You should opt for the tyrant. So on the one side, you have wise people, but these wise people are very few, and they should use force because the other people are not wise, so they cannot be persuaded by wise arguments. So the wise people are in this strange predicament that they should not, they cannot express their being wise by arguments, but they can only use force that is not actually a tool for wise people. And on the other side, you have a mass of people. They are not wise, and since they are not wise, they will be, in the end, provoking a mess. And the Herald makes an example. Take a poor farmer, for example. Even if he's wise, how is going to be able to apply himself to the city's affairs when he's so burdened by the hard work on this farm? And then it's a bitter thing to see men of base birth, men that are not noble, poor people, base birth, anti-city, make some fine speeches to the people, and then with those speeches become even more prominent than the nobles. So you see that in the oligarchic or authoritarian attitude, there is a very strong suspicion against speech. And of course, because speech is freedom, speech and free speech are more or less the same. Because if you speak properly, you speak freely. Otherwise, you will be a messenger. You will be a herald. You will be not someone that has his own arguments. Now Theseus replies, and this is particularly beautiful. Theseus, oh, what an eloquent herald we have here. What a profusion of irrelevant little words. All right then, my man, you've started this debate, so let's perform it. You said your piece, now hear mine. There is no heavier burden for a city to bear than a monarch. There is no heavier burden for a city to bear than a monarch, king. To begin with, a city like that has no laws that are equal to all of its citizens. It can't. It is a place where one man holds all the laws of the city in his own hands and dictates them as he wants. What then of equality? Written laws, however, give this equal treatment to all, rich and poor. If a poor man is insulted by a rich one, then that poor man has every right to use the same words against that rich man. The poor can win against the rich if justice is on his side. Now, and this is you find this the justification of parousia, free speech, challenging free speech. The essence of freedom is in these words. He who has a good idea for the city, let him bring it before its citizens. So everyone can have a good idea. Everyone can have a good idea. Everyone can contribute to the common good. So in order to have a flourishing polity, in order to have a flourishing common good, we should give everyone the opportunity to express his own ideas. This is the justification of free speech. So free speech is something that's proper to freedom. And then I give you the floor. And this is said by one of the most important philosophers in the Greek tradition. I like this philosopher particularly. We have very little of this philosopher. He was deeply hated by Plato. Plato is said also to have burnt his books. It's not a nice thing to burn books, even if they are bad books. I think books are holy objects. This is holy, because it's something that is the product of the human spirit, of the human soul. This is a holy thing. We should never destroy a book. A book is not something we can destroy. Now, it is the tradition tells that Plato liked to destroy Democritus' books. And here I have a few fragments. We only have fragments. Democritus. Now, Democritus has a fragment 226. And it's so beautiful. It's very simple. I read it in Greek and then I translate it. It is, unfortunately, I'm too old now, I have problems with but it's very simple. It's oikeion eleuteries parousia. So, parousia, free speech, challenging free speech, is something proper of freedom. Oikeion eleuteries. So I repeat, oikeion eleuteries parousia.
La Torre continui debatę między heraldem miasta Teby, które jest tyranią, a po prostu Tezeus. Po prostu, bo tyrant, po prostu, bo Herold mówi, ja chcę rozmawiać z tym, który rządzi tutaj. A on odpowiada, my jesteśmy wszyscy równi. Po prostu, ale jak po prostu możecie ludzi bezmyślni mogą prowadzić państwo? I on to powie, jaki uczony mamy tutaj na miejsce tego Herolda. Tutaj jest też jakaś sprawa, że nawet człowiek o niskim urodzeniu może powiedzieć rzeczy bardzo sensowne. I widzą Państwo, że Herolda mówi w taki sposób, żeby wyrażać niechęć w stosunku do tych nisko urodzonych. Tak jakby osoby mądre z najwyższych warstw, po prostu skoro są mądrzejsi, mieliby prawo używać siły, po prostu, żeby zwyciężała zasada ich mądrości. A Tezeusz mówi nie. Każdy człowiek może wykazać, może po prostu wyrażać słowa mądrości. A tutaj jest po prostu jego istota wolności wypowiedzi i po prostu i cytuję jeden autor grecki, który jest Demokrytos, który Demokrytos był niemiły widziany przez Platona, dlatego że Demokrytos po prostu powiedział, działalność podania wszystko pod krytyką to jest paresja. I po prostu, i Platon mówi, powinniśmy spalić te książki. I on to mówi, że nie, książki nie powinny być spalone, bo książki są wynikiem po prostu działania duszy człowieka. I więc i powtarza, po prostu paresja się wyrazi, kwestionując różne rzeczy. Massimo, grazie. Dziękuję bardzo. Ja przepraszam, ale ostatnie elementy po prostu...
I haven't finished.
Devi finire? Hai finito?
No, I have to finish. Yeah.
I'm
sorry, but I haven't finished.
Okay.
I haven't finished because I know, well, I will finish very quickly. Okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry, but...
No, it's my pleasure.
Now, paresia, however, can have a more private, apolitical, if you like, meaning. In this second sense, it means outspokenness, sincerity, frankness. Of course, this private meaning, which we also find in the 5th century Athenian cultural tradition, for instance, again, in Euripides, necessarily refers to a social and political context where outspokenness and frankness is still somehow possible and appreciated. In this sense, even monarchic paresia can, I would say, private paresia. Private paresia means no longer a paresia that is instrumental to the public deliberation, but that you challenge, and by challenging a vice, the holder of power. So this is called by Foucault, and I would agree, monarchic paresia. Sorry. So even this monarchic paresia, which is outspokenness, is a different story now. We have, I'm sorry, I had to cut a few steps of my argument because it would be too long, but from this democratic use of paresia, we go to a more private. From the public use, we go to the private use. In the private use, it's no longer challenging free speech, but this kind of frankness, boldness. It's to being bold, to being sincere, to being faithful to yourself. And in a context where this free speech is no longer instrumental or material to public deliberation, but it's just something to give advice and you advised by challenging. Now, in this sense, the even monarchic parousia contain a rest of democratic parousia. So I think even this monarchic parousia, this private parousia, if you like, has still maintains still a rest, a grain of the previous notion, the previous experience and practice, and is alimented, nurtured by the recollection and echo of the previous experience of parousia, the public one. It is this second private monarchic form of parousia that we find used in the Gospels, for instance, and in the ancient Christian writings. Parousia has, here means courage. We find parousia used in the Gospels, in the Old, especially in the New Testament, and in the Acts of Apostles, in expressing one's own opinions firmly, sincerely, even stubbornly. If it is here a precondition, while in the ancient Greek tradition, in the democratic use of this and practice of parousia, parousia is a precondition of political freedom. In the New Testament, parousia becomes a precondition of martyrdom. So you understand, to be a martyr, you be filled in with parousia. So you are filled in with parousia, which is now a private virtue and inspiration. It's a different use of the term. But nevertheless, there is a remnant of the old spirit of free speech. So still, even in this transformed cultural climate, the old prestige and dignity of parousia is remembered and maintained. Free speech is still a great principle. And in this sense, I find, and perhaps I can finish with this, I will mention the different readings. There is a passage in the Leviticus 26:13. Now, you know that, of course, the Bible, I'm speaking of the Old Testament. The Bible is in Hebrew originally, but we have a first translation in Greek, the so-called Bible of the 70, okay? So this is made in Alexandria in an Hellenistic atmosphere in the 3rd century before Christus. And here we found the use of parousia. I don't read the Greek, I read the Vulgata Latin, and I tell you where we find the parousia. So the fragment is, the passage is Leviticus 26:13. Ego Dominus Deus Vester, qui eduxi vos de terra Egyptiorum, ne serviretis eis, et qui confregi vectes iugi vestri, ut incederetis erecti. In English is, I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, that ye should not be their bondmen, and I've broken the bands of your yoke and made you go upright. Now, this upright in the Greek, the Bible of 70s is metaparesia. Upright metaparesia. So to go not bending, but upright. You understand upright? So your head is not bending to anyone.
Czołem do góry.
You are proud of your being yourself. You are not bent to anyone. I have the Martin Luther's translation. Und habe euch aufrecht einhergehen lassen. So it's aufrecht, aufrecht. In Italian, Diodati translation, I think the best translation, the most beautiful translation of the Bible, the 16th century Italian translation. Io sono il Signore Dio vostro, che vi ho tratti fuori del paese degli Egizi. Acciocché non foste loro servi, e ho spezzate le sbarre del vostro gioco, e vi ho fatto camminare a capo erto. A capo erto. Metà paresia in the Greek translation. And to finish, the French translation by Jean Calvin. Je suis le Seigneur votre Dieu qui vous est retiré du pays d'Égypte, afin que ne le fussiez serfs, et j'ai rompu le cordon de votre joug et vous ai fait cheminer la tête levée. La tête levée. You would say, what is the original Hebrew term? Now, the original Hebrew term is komiot, is a participle. And komiot means in upright. So the translation, our translation are correct. What is strange is the Greek translation. Being upright is metaparesia. Now, this is beautiful. How could you not be bending? What is the way you are not bending to anyone? Bending means that you are not the serf of anyone, that you can be proud of yourself. Then you could cheminer la tête levée, which is a wonderful expression. What is that gives you la tête levée? Is only if you are a free speaker, if you have free speech, if you can challenge the other opinion, if you have a word to say, and if you can say this word. So you see the wonderful cultural, mutation, but contact and bridging, and the content of this, so that paresia, the free speech, is also something that is part of our Christian and religious inheritance. Thank you.
Myślę, że nie potrzeba tłumaczyć. Wkrótce będę mówił tylko jedną rzecz. Że profesor Latorre, patrząc na Stary Testament, tak, pokazał, że Bóg, który doprowadził wybrany naród do Izraelu i umożliwił im chodzić po prostu z głowy do góry, to jest nazywane po starożytnym greckim metaparesia, prawie że paresia. Dlatego, że człowiek, który wymawia i powie całą prawdę, może iść z głową do góry, może być dumny siebie. I więc z tego powodu podkreślił, że to pojęcie należy do naszej tradycji. Czy Państwo mają pytania? Nie? Po prostu, czy były interesujące? Tak. Tak, dobrze. pani Ewa Michałkiewicz podpisze dla prawników i po prostu i jedna karta dla osoby i pani Anna dla administratywistów. Dobrze?